one other big thing that we got to talk about, of course, is the official announcement of the Fantastic Four. The official cast reveal happened last week on Valentine's Day of all days. And we've long speculated, long talked about the cast. And if you want to really know our thoughts about the cast, I mean, we talked about this 3 months ago on the podcast when it was largely reported that the 4 people who would be leading the film are in fact leading the film, and that's Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and Ebon Moss-Bachrach as Ben Grimm. We shared a lot of thoughts about this cast and what they can mean, so I think we talked a lot about that there. But I mean, now that it's officially confirmed, how do you feel about that? What's your level of excitement? You know, we'll talk about the poster and the release date in a second here, but I just want to get your overall reaction that now we finally reached a place after all these years, because it's been like, I don't know, like 5 years since Kevin Feige first mentioned it at 2019 San Diego Comic-Con. All these years later, now we can officially say we have our Fantastic Four in the MCU.
Yeah, and it feels like we've gone through 5 different castings for each role to figure out who the hell is this Fantastic Four cast is going to be. But to be honest, this is a great landing. I think across the board, it's a perfect cast. I have no notes, no qualms about anything. I'm just excited at this point. I can't wait. One of my favorite memes I've seen so far is it's clobbering time, cousin. I thought that was really funny. But man, yeah, I'm just really excited to see this group of people, because they all individually, again, everything they've been in, I like. We've talked about probably every single one of these people on the podcast at some point in time as something we've watched, and so it's like, damn, they're here together. Not only that, they're the Fantastic Four. So I couldn't have asked for a better casting.
I think that this is just, it's wonderful. It's really wonderful to see, because all 4 of these people have so much heat behind them. I think that this is just like a great point to capture a lot of these actors. Pedro Pascal, of the 4, he's the biggest star. He definitely is, known by the most people, which I think you need at least one person a part of this cast that is like widely known. I wouldn't necessarily say that Pedro Pascal is a butts and seats movie star as of yet, but he could be with this role. He certainly could be to that level and to that stature, and I think that this is just going to take him to an entirely another level. But everybody knows him from the tremendous work that he's done on television, and you can say the same thing about the rest of the actors. Like Vanessa Kirby really captured a lot of people's eyeballs with The Crown, and then eventually Tom Cruise handpicked her for Mission Impossible, and she was exposed to a larger audience because of that. Joseph Quinn, Stranger Things, hugely popular. Ebon Moss-Bachrach, The Bear, one of the most celebrated shows right now on television, and is coming off of an Emmy win. So these people have so much heat and so much momentum behind them that you are capturing them at really the perfect time, because I think Marvel has always done a really, really tremendous balance of, let's get our legends, let's get our really seasoned actors who people know, but let's also get some people that we can take to that next level. They might not necessarily be having their breakthrough with us, but they've only done a few things beforehand. This can really be the moment now that they become full-fledged movie stars, A-listers. And I think that that's the opportunity that's presented now with this cast. And I think also this is easily the best Fantastic Four cast that we've gotten out of any live action iteration. Like for my money, I like the other actors a part of those movies. Like I like Jessica Alba. I like Michael B. Jordan, of course. I like Miles Teller. I think these are all really, really great people, but as a collective, these 4 just feel right. They feel very, very right and good together. And so I can't wait to see the chemistry and the family vibes. But speaking of family vibes, I think the cast is not even the most interesting thing, because we've kind of known about them. The most interesting thing to me was the poster. It was the choice of how they decided to roll this out. Again, it was on Valentine's Day, so it was presented as like a Valentine's Day card. But if you look at the poster, I mean, there's so many cues and clues as to what this movie might be about when it's set. It's clearly calling back to 60s time period, and the outfits and the posters and pictures in the background. All of these choices are very intentional. And so when you looked at the poster and when you started to like see all of those small details, what were your takeaways? How did you feel about that? And what might that tell us about the actual story and setting of this movie?
Oh man, 60s. First and foremost, pretty sure Fantastic Four came around 61. So I love that already. I was like, oh shoot, they're literally going back to the time of origin. And there's so much about it that's so interesting to me, because right, we go to the moon, 1969. So in the 60s in general, it's already an interesting time for space. But imagine these group of people who you've never heard of, who went beyond the moon, who did all these other things before we even go to the moon as a country. I think that's an amazing concept as well. But I love the idea of a period piece, and I just like that we're here, man, and I like what it could also mean for the MCU too, like how they get to our current time, right? Do they get mumbo jumboed in some reality space thing that we've been talking about to get us into the time period that we're in now? I don't know, but I still like the idea of just a Marvel period piece. Like you said, the first family. This is Marvel at its origins, at its core, and so it's like, let's talk about that. We haven't necessarily done that a ton in Marvel, right? We haven't necessarily gone back to and be like, no, let's attribute these people to where they came from, the beginning. This really feels like, to me, like a love letter to Marvel. You know, it did come out on Valentine's Day, but it's like, yeah, no, let's really get into it and talk about what the Fantastic Four is about, because a lot of people honestly still don't know the importance of the Fantastic Four. And so, to me, looking at this poster, looking at the time that it's set, and all of it is that love letter, is that that return to origins, the return to form of what Marvel even is and how it came to be with Fantastic Four. This is putting importance on the name, to me, of Fantastic Four, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah, it's been long speculated that this movie may indeed be a period piece, and I've always been a fan of that idea, of that particular route to go. And I think that this poster clearly is pointing the finger at the fact that that will be the case. I don't think that there's any ambiguity in the design of this and in the release of this that it's going to be a period piece. What's really interesting to me is that Pedro Pascal posted the poster on his Instagram, and he used a song when he posted it. He used the Beatles song "All You Need Is Love." Now, what's really interesting is that you look at the poster and you can see Ben Grimm is reading an edition of Time magazine. It's when Lyndon B. Johnson becomes president, and so that happened at the end of 1963. The Beatles arrived to America in February of 1964, February 7th, I think it was, of 1964, and they released this on Valentine's Day, which would be a week later in 1964. So I think that they're very clearly telling us this movie takes place in February of 1964, which would be 60 years to the day in which they released it, which I think is just brilliant in the manner in which they did it. Now, of course, it could take place over a longer period of time. It might not be something that happens over the course of 24 hours or a week. Maybe it goes from February to, I don't know, the end of the year. I'm not sure, but I think that a large part of this movie is going to clearly take place in the year of 1964, maybe into 1965 as well, to just showcase again, the style and the time frame and all of these major events that were happening in the country. But then even beyond that, man, you look at the poster and the vibes and the energy that it gives off. This is very much a family. This is very much a team of people that connect with each other, that exist as a family outside of just being superheroes, something we're not totally accustomed to in the MCU up until this point. And there is no better team, there is no better group of heroes than to do this than with the Fantastic Four. That's clearly who they're meant to be. And even in the live action films that we've gotten up until this point, your mileage may vary on the quality of them. We haven't totally seen that family vibe. I think maybe the Tim Story movies kind of started to tackle that, but I think that there's a great opportunity here to do something that we just haven't seen with the 60s and the family vibe. Obviously, that time period, family and all of those values were super important to the country and to America. We were coming off of the heels of World War II and starting to enter into the Cold War as well. There's so much that they can do there and so much that they can play with. But it does beg the question, if it does indeed take place in the 60s, I think that raises a couple of issues, because it's largely known Iron Man is the first real true superhero in the MCU. 2008, that's when it all kicked off. They kind of played around with that a little bit with Captain Marvel, set her in the 90s, but I think that they can kind of get away with it. Like, okay, only Nick Fury knew about Captain Marvel. Only S.H.I.E.L.D. knew about the Skrulls. Might be a little bit of a reach, but we'll go with it. That's just one example of like something before Iron Man and Tony Stark. If they were to go back to the 60s with this, and let's maybe assume it's in the sacred timeline, largely in the comics, the Fantastic Four, they're celebrities. People know who they are. They're like well known to the country and to the world. How do you get away with that? Do you think that this is like actually our current sacred timeline, the proper MCU universe, or does this present an opportunity to maybe set this in an alternate timeline, an alternate universe, and somehow by the end of it, maybe to your point, there's some shenanigans that get us caught up to the present. They get transported over to our universe because they've already played with that in the Marvel. So do you think that that might be an opportunity that they explore in this movie?
Actually, one of my favorite ideas that I don't know if I had somebody else had it was that they do end up in the same universe that we see at the end of the Marvels that Monica Rambeau ends up in. I love that idea because now we don't have to worry about 25 however many x amount of different timelines, right? We can really sit down and only have to care and worry about the two timelines. We'd only have to worry about our sacred timeline and the one that Monica Rambeau finds herself in. So a part of me really likes the idea that like they end up in the other timeline with Monica Rambeau and Kelsey Grammer Beast and the X-Men over there, because now we're talking, right? Now it's like, oh, that's how we're putting all of this together. That's how we're merging this X-Men Fantastic Four thing, is they've been in a different reality this entire time, or a different timeline this entire time. So that I'm still kind of going with that right now, because to your point, we should have been known about them if they were really in that timeline. So I really like the idea that they don't exist in the sacred, but maybe the other one that we see potentially be important here in the future.
Yeah, I think that that's the route that they have to go, because you would be asking us to go to far places to say like, yeah, just put aside what we've told you for the past 15 years in terms of Tony Stark being the first real public superhero in this universe. Oh yeah, there was this group of 4 people in the 60s who were super famous and had these powers, but now all of a sudden the public consciousness is just like it's evaporated for them. Like we don't have any context or knowledge about them. Like that just wouldn't make sense. So I think they almost have to come from a different universe, and somehow
Yeah.
they end up in that universe that you mentioned in Monica's. They get ported over to the sacred. I don't know, they'll figure all of that out, but I think that this has to be a different universe to make it make sense as a period piece, which it does feel like they're going for. Last quick thing before we wrap this up, I want to ask you, this movie was initially slated to come out in May of 2025, but it swapped places with Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts is now going to come out May 2nd. This is going to come out July 25th. This is coming out 2 weeks after James Gunn's Superman Legacy, which is, going to kick off the new DC universe. I don't know. Do you think that this is like friendly rivalry, Kevin Feige, James Gunn, like, oh yeah, you want to drop Superman, big heavy hitter? Okay, we got something for you. We're going to come back with Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family. Everybody wants to see this. Could it even be pettier than that? Is there maybe some animosity because James Gunn is left and taken over DC? I mean, what do you make of that? And what do you make of the prospects of how these two movies might perform coming out within 2 weeks of each other? I think that's something not to sleep on. Most movies, most big blockbusters, they'll make the majority of their money in 2 weeks. So I don't know if they'll necessarily hurt each other, but what if Superman Legacy is bad and Fantastic Four is good? Or what if Superman Legacy is really good and Fantastic Four is not so good? Like how might this all start to shape up as a narrative come July 2025?
And my hope and best case scenario is this is like Barbenheimer in superhero font. You know what I'm saying? Like that's my hope and best case scenario, man. These are two really big heavy hitter properties on the forefront, and they both are in some ways starting new things, right? Superman just as important to DC as Fantastic Four is important to Marvel. So I'm hoping this is more friendly, to be honest, in way of perfect competition, the way economics works. I'm hoping that everyone's like, oh, we're just going to go see both. You know what I mean? Like everyone's like, oh, this is Marvel week, and then wait a little bit, oh, this is DC week. That's really what I'm hoping. And I think, and I think Kevin Feige would look at it that way, hopefully, and I hope James Gunn will look at it that way too, because I've never seen them as like, of course, competitive for sure, but I've never seen them as like, ooh, I need to be petty right now, in that way. But I think this is all in good spirit, and I think and I think again, Barbenheimer did serve as a good basis to say two things can exist, though very different experiment. Those are like two different completely movies, which makes it as crazy as it is. They don't fit the same mold, right? They don't fit the same demographic completely either. But I think they have a chance to do something cool with these two movies being as close as they are back to back, both coming out July 2025. So I don't know, man, but those are my hopes.
Yeah, I think we all want these movies to be great. We want them to be successful. A rising tide raises all ships. When DC's doing good, Marvel can do good. When Marvel is doing good, DC can also do good. But you want the quality of the films to match that, and you want people to be excited about superhero movies being back, quote unquote, because we've largely talked about how they're not here. They're dead, they're gone, or whatever the case may be. The hyperbole that's out there. But I think if you have two movies in the way of Superman Legacy and the Fantastic Four, really, really major properties. I mean, July 2025 could be really epic if they're both great movies. I think James Gunn has obviously proven himself time and time again that he's capable. He's
Mm-hmm.
more than capable of making excellent superhero movies, some of the best that we've gotten in the medium. And Marvel has largely done the same up until a certain point, but I think that they've shown us for no less than 12 years, like we're more than capable. We can do this, especially when we know the pressure is on, and they know that the pressure is on with Fantastic Four. And so I just hope that they're both great. I hope that they work out and we can go to the movies within 2 weeks of each other and see maybe, potentially two of the best superhero films that we've gotten, at least of the past 10 years. Cause I think we want that for both Superman and Fantastic Four. Cause it's been a really, really long time. And in the case of Fantastic Four, it's never happened in which we've gotten good movies for these properties in particular. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we haven't gotten great Superman movies per se for a lot of people, one that's universally loved. It's about due that we get one. Same thing for Fantastic Four. We've never really gotten that. So the chance and the opportunity that's in front of them, I mean, it could be the highest of highs that we've experienced thus far, and that's what I'm hoping for when it comes 2025. But we will certainly have to see. But folks, those are all of our thoughts about all the big updates from the MCU. If you have any thoughts or opinions about any of those updates, hit us up and let us know what you think.